when you were playing there in Nashville, and I was helping out with some merch with Pokey
Yeah.
Lafarge and yourself. I really enjoyed hearing you, and was really, I really was impressed with your presence, your music, your voice, your playing the guitar, all that stuff. Um, and
Thanks.
Yeah, sure. And I know you were doing some other dates with Pokey. Have you done those dates yet?
No, not yet. We have August 2nd through the 9th in the Midwest booked,
Okay.
though.
And was that the first time you had met or opened or played with Pokey?
Yes, first time for all of that. Yeah, it was such a blast. That was a really fun weekend.
Nice. And how did that come about, that show?
We are on the same booking agency. We are both signed to Curland. And yeah, it was kind of a last minute thing. Like, I think my agent reached out like a week before and was like, we need someone, like, we need an opener for these 3 shows. And I'm just like kind of a yes person this year. I was like, yes, I will do that. So, yeah, that's kind of how the whole year's been going, but it's been really fun. And luckily I have kind of my schedule is tailored to do those sorts of things last minute. So
yeah. And so starting out, you were, independent, doing everything yourself, I'm guessing, early on, and probably for a long time. And like, what has been the progression? Like, how has that kind of, like, what have been some steps that have, like, where you, okay, I'm doing everything, I'm booking, I'm writing the music, I'm doing everything, to like, what have been some kind of the steps or progressions along the way for you?
yeah, so recently, basically everything post pandemic, I mean, like, when everything shut down, everything in my life changed. I was doing a lot of like corporate gigs and weddings and cover gigs and just playing music full time. But then everything obviously got canceled, and it kind of forced me into doing original music again. And that's when I decided to record the album. So we recorded the album in like early 2021. And then from there, I just started like slowly building my team. So my producer, his wife ended up being my manager. She's still my manager. We brought on a publicist. And then when the record was out, we brought on radio promoters. And then finally brought on, like, Curland wanted to have me on their roster, the agency. So it's kind of just been like a slow progression over the past 2 years of the team growing. And yeah, it's so nice because before that I was doing most of it. I wasn't really doing too much original music before, so I don't know. It's like it was hard in a different way. I did have a lot of responsibilities, but now I don't know if I could do what I'm doing without like the amount of help that I'm getting from people that are like, that's what they do for their profession. Because, like, yeah, independent artists have to wear a lot of hats, but it has been very nice to have divided the work up a little bit recently.
Yeah, and have people with certain skill sets being able to do what they do, and
yes.
that's great. So, was there a point where you started to think of your entity? I don't know how to describe it, as a business, where I know for myself, for many years, I just want to make art. I just want to be creative. I just and not even really too concerned about money. I mean, though you have to live. Was there a point kind of like where that shifted for you?
Yeah. Now with the team, it definitely feels like we're running a small business. And I guess like it really started to feel that way as soon as the album came out. Cause I mean, yeah, I'm like, it's like, I'm kind of the business and that's the product. And so, yeah, there are a lot of like sacrifices that have to be made financially when you're like kind of starting a small business. And I think the same thing sort of applies to being an independent artist, like at the very beginning of your career. But it does feel like work. Like when I'm not on tour, I'm sitting at this desk, like working 40 hours a week, like meetings and interviews and like just scheduling. Like I'm the accountant and like doing all the admin stuff and scheduling everything. So it's a lot. It's a lot of work, but I enjoy it. I don't know if I would, I think I enjoy it because it's like I'm working for myself and I've been doing that for almost 10 years, just being a musician. So I enjoy it because I think, I don't know if I could do it for someone else is what I'm saying. Like it takes a lot of like commitment. I don't know if I could be like as stoked to do it for someone else, but it is nice to
with some goals in mind. You're moving forward towards specific things that you want to achieve in your career. It sounds like.
Yeah, and like the harder I work, like I'm the one that benefits from it, and so that's motivating for sure.
And so, do you have any mixed feelings about calling your art being a business? Being that this is looking at it as a product as opposed to like this is my art. Do you have any feelings about that?
Not really, because I am still finding, I was worried that I wasn't going to have time to create still and that I was kind of just going to get into business mode. But I think like the more this sort of ramps up, like the more creative I am and the more inspired I am to like continue making new music. So if that wasn't happening, like I might have mixed feelings about it. But I think it's really important to like hone all the skills as an independent artist. Like I don't really want my goal is to not like sign to a label. I would like to remain independent for as long as possible. And so it's really important that I can like wear a lot of the hats or at least understand what the hats mean if someone else is wearing them. And so yeah, that's been actually cool. The music business is kind of a scary place. I'm so glad I'm like a little bit older, in the later part of my 20s, because I think I just have like a lot more awareness and like I'm better at just discerning, what other people's motives are too, because
it's not just about just getting signed and like, some people might think that's the ultimate goal and then have basically no say in certain things of their business or their art.
Yeah, that's not what this is about at all for me. So, yeah, that's been cool. Cause I mean, of course, for a minute there, especially, once I started working on the album, like when the pandemic hit, I was like, man, I wish I wish I would have done this earlier. I wish I wouldn't have spent so much time like playing corporate gigs and all that stuff. And I'm like, I'm so glad I didn't do this any younger than I am now, because I just think like the experience and obviously like all those years like honing the craft too.
How, if you were doing what you're doing now when you're younger, you wouldn't have had some of the insights and some of the, I guess, wisdom that you have now.
Yeah.
Oh. And so you were playing corporate gigs and doing a lot of covers. It sounds like you weren't really doing original music.
Yeah.
And so you were honing your craft. And were you writing that whole time kind of on your own or no?
I wasn't really writing that much. I mean, over the course of those like 6 years, I wrote a good amount of songs, but nothing near what I'm like writing these days. And I think, I just didn't really feel like picking up the guitar after doing 6 gigs in a week that are like 3 hours long, doing covers. But it definitely, and I was solo for a majority of those gigs. And so just like performing for 3 to 4 hours solo acoustic, I think that obviously helped a lot, like just in the performance skill realm. So I did need that time, that experience, but I'm just really glad I'm doing something completely different now.
Yeah, you got all this time to putting in the hours of actually performing, not just practicing at home, but in front of people where you need to be engaging and that sort of thing. Well, I think that really showed when I heard you. And so you're from the Santa Cruz area originally.
Yes.
Which is a beautiful part of the country.
Oh, yeah.
And I would think musically it could be interesting, but maybe, as far as all the influences, because I know, like I do West African percussion and I play drum set and stuff like
Oh,
that. And I
cool.
know that, like Santa Cruz is kind of a hotbed in the United States for percussion of different,
Mhm. Yep.
different cultures from around the world. So I'm wondering if you felt that influence consciously, or do you think that seeped in some way?
Yeah, there's definitely like a big roots element to the Santa Cruz music scene, whether it be like in world music or like roots reggae is
Hmm.
huge there too. And like, while neither of those genres like seem present in my songwriting, I think there's an underlying sort of influence there for sure. I think
Hmm.
just also the freedom to be creative was like very supported
Uh-huh.
in Santa Cruz, and especially a town I grew up in Ben Lomond, which is like in the mountains, like very hippie,
Hmm.
free spirited. And yeah, I think that had a lot to do with it. But the Santa Cruz music scene is small.
Yeah.
Um, and so for what I was wanting to accomplish in my career, had to make the move to like a more central city. I'm in Austin right now. And like a big music town too. And I
Hmm.
chose Austin over Nashville because I wanted to be like far away from the industry. But
Yeah.
I mean, I have to go to Nashville like once a month basically now. But I
Uh-huh.
still just kind of enjoy Austin as like this little sanctuary where it's mostly focused on live music. There's just like
Yeah.
so many awesome local bands that like aren't famous, they're not touring, they just like crush it every night. There's so many cool venues here, and it's really really focused on the live music experience, which is definitely what I'm in this whole thing for, more
Do you
so than
find
the
yourself
industry.
collaborating much there?
No, just because I've been on the road like
Mm.
all year, and I moved here at the end of 2018. So I really just had 1 year before the pandemic to like meet people and make connections. And really by the time I was like starting to book a lot of gigs here and like kind of start my band here, everything shut down. And
Hmm.
then by the time everything was reopened, my album was out, and like I'm just on the road now. So yeah, it's kind of funny. I don't really play here that much, and I'm just still meeting a lot of people.
Uh-huh. Oh, I just thought of it as we're talking. I have a friend. I lived in Portland, Oregon for many years, and I have a friend there who lives in Austin named Chris Mosley. And I don't know how active he is, but he's a phenomenal musician.
Oh, cool.
He actually got into like microtonal guitar stuff.
Wow,
Um,
cool.
yeah, which is
That's
not
awesome. Yeah.
common. But anyway, maybe I'll run across him. So growing up in tell me the name of the town again. Ben
I grew up in Ben Lomond.
Ben
It's
Lomond.
like Felton, Ben Lomond, and Boulder Creek are the like mountain towns in the valley, is what we call it in Santa Cruz.
Okay. And so I know that, like you said, that there's definitely a hippie influence, hippie vibe. Did you grow up in that sort of household, like a sort of a very free, what's the word, kind of, well, in that sort of hippie vibe in your house?
Um, Comparatively to others that like other of my friends that grew up there too, I never thought it was like, you know, we definitely like weren't the hippie family out of the people that we were around. But looking back now, compared to like the rest of the country or world, like yes,
Uh,
definitely.
and
Um,
so, did you grow up in a house with two parents, or what was your
yep.
house like?
So yeah, my parents are together, and I have an older brother and a younger sister. And so yeah, we were in Ben Lomond for our whole lives, like born and raised. And yeah, it was lovely. How to like, I think I feel very lucky to have grown up in such a beautiful place. Like even to
Mm.
this day, there's very few places I've been that I would say are more aesthetically pleasing
Yeah.
and just like energetically refreshing. Being
Hmm.
around the redwoods and the ocean right there, like there's just a lot to be said about that. And I think that allowed for a lot of creativity to flow through just my whole town. Like there are a number of like full-time successful songwriter and musicians that I grew up with that are like
Hmm.
doing similar things to what I'm doing now in like absolutely crushing the game. And I'm like, we all grew up in this tiny little town of Ben Lomond. I'm like, there must have been something in the water like during those years where we're all, because we're all like very similar in age. I'm not sure if you've heard of Jesse Daniel.
I've
He's
heard the
like,
name.
yeah, he's like really, really coming up in the like alt country scene right now, just like on tour year round, like, you know, has tons of fans, like selling out shows. And like Jesse and I grew up in Ben Lomond together, and we did like musical theater together as like a kid, you know, kids. And yeah, there's so many stories like that. Like a ton of our friends are, you know, bands touring year round, putting out records. I'm just like, I don't know what happened, but there's clearly something going on there.
Yeah. The zeitgeist. And so what did or do your parents do?
So my mom is a therapist, and my dad worked as a project manager in like cold storage construction. And so, yeah, neither of them like had creative jobs necessarily. Neither of them play music. They have great taste in music. My dad played tenor sax in high school and stuff, and he was really great, but never played music when I was growing up. So, yeah, but always were supportive. Like I knew I was going to be a singer pretty much since I was 2. Yeah. There wasn't really any other like option in my mind. I was like, well, I'm obviously going to be a singer, you know, like I don't have to decide. And they were always so supportive of that, which is, yeah, definitely would not have made it this far without that.
They've never voiced concerns or worries or anything. They're just like, go for it, put yourself into it.
Yeah. And I think that, you know, like not having, I didn't even realize how difficult of a career it was going to be until like after high school. I was like, why did I choose this?
Yeah.
And now I'm like, you know, it's way too late to change now. I'd been like writing songs for so long at that point. And, but yeah, I'm glad that they didn't like put the worry and fear in my head about trying to make it. Cause I think that just like gave me the extra motivation. I feel like when you really believe something is like already happening, then, you know, you have kind of a better shot at making it work. And I think everyone that I grew up around was so supportive too. Like my high school counselor was like, I don't think you need, like, you don't need to apply for university. Like you don't need to take the SATs or ACTs. Like you're going to go to music school and you're just going to do music. Like that's fine. And I'm like, for a high school counselor to say that means a lot. So
for sure.
Yeah, I had like tons of support.
Yeah. And so wow, yeah, that's amazing. I can relate as far as I was a art major in college, visual art, and a musician, and I had this thought, a naive thought that music's hard. You know, I somehow knew it's hard, art's hard, but maybe if you do both, it wouldn't be. that was my thought. You know, if one's hard, the other's hard, you put the two together, and then that kind of makes up for. So
right? Oh my gosh. Yeah, those are, you know, two of the hardest things for sure, but most fulfilling, I would argue.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. I mean, you have your own unique path, which so at some point you went to music school. You mean so you have been making music basically your whole life. So as a really young child, you were singing, and then you picked up a guitar, taught yourself guitar at some point. And how did you approach learning? Were you finding a chord book, or how did you start?
Yeah, I had been taking piano lessons for a few years, and I just like really didn't connect with the instrument. I just like, I wasn't passionate about it. I loved singing and I was taking vocal lessons and I just wanted to stick with that. I never wanted to practice piano, and it was like always stressful. But then I started writing songs, you know, and I was like 10.
On piano?
Kind of just like, yeah, on piano. My piano teacher would try and like harmonize them for me and like write chord charts and stuff. But yeah, I was mostly just writing lyrics, melodies. I would sing them like a cappella, you know, and when I was around 12, I was like, okay, I really need to like accompany myself and I don't want to play piano. And I was like, I really want guitar lessons. I was just like fascinated by the guitar. My dad had an acoustic guitar that was like just collecting dust. And I asked them to send me to like guitar lessons, and they were like, no, you did not practice piano. We're not doing that. And so I was like, all right, I'll just learn by myself. And I think I just looked up chord charts. I remember the first song I learned was a Dixie Chicks song.
Mhm. I
Not
think
Ready
the
to
Chick
Make
sound?
Nice. The Chicks. Yes, the Chicks.
Dixie Chicks back then.
Yeah. And I just remember, first chords like E minor, G, C. And if I just like played those over and over and over again. And that's how like all my first original songs started too.
Mhm.
And that they kind of just took off from there. Like never had lessons after that. I probably should be like a lot further along. Like,
Well,
you
did
know.
you ever have a time where you felt like you really wanted to focus on rhythm? Because I mean, and the reason I ask that is because, like, I mean, it's easy to say I should have been further along, but from someone who heard you for the first time, your timing sound, as a drummer, you sounded great. Your feel sounded great. The way that you accompanied yourself, all of that, it was tasteful, but also you had, nice embellishments. And so was there a time where rhythm was really a focus for you?
Thank you, by the way. That means a lot coming from a drummer because, I'm always like very aware of timing. It's like, I think it's the most important thing in music, in my opinion.
I agree. And Victor Wooten, do you know who he is?
Oh, yes.
So
Yes.
he's here, and this is like the gospel by Victor Wooten is nothing. The groove is above everything else.
Oh, yeah.
Wrong note, whatever, doesn't matter. The groove. Yeah. Anyway, sorry. Go on.
Completely agree. Nope, that's like right where I'm at too. So I'm always like very aware of that. So I appreciate the compliment. Rhythm was a big deal. I don't know if it was even like I wasn't consciously thinking about it, but because I played by myself, I think I had to like incorporate all the elements of like what accompaniment means, not just like the chord structure behind or the reharmonization of like certain melodies. But rhythm is huge. And when I started writing songs and just like playing solo acoustic, I was also listening to a lot of just solo acoustic musicians. And I was a big fan of Jack Johnson. And it's funny because again, I can't really hear it in my music, but the way he plays guitar is so percussive.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think I took a lot away from that because, I think even as like an acoustic player, the percussive elements to accompany myself are probably the most important, even subconsciously to me. But I think they came from listening to other players do that thing.
Well, a lot of times when people have just accompanied themselves, they haven't played with other musicians. A lot of times they can be rubato, and when they finally play with somebody, it can be challenging as a drummer. It can be challenging to play with somebody
Definitely.
who has not played a lot with other people. So when did you start playing with other musicians and specifically drums, and what was that like?
Yeah, so I grew up going to church, and so I played with a band, fairly often, like from a young age. Also
So
did
like, how young are we talking?
probably like 10.
Okay, so you were playing with a timekeeper at a really young age, so that probably helped a lot too.
Yeah, and I was in musical theater too from like age 7 to 18. And so even like the productions I was in when I was 7, like we had a live band and it was like a rock band style. It wasn't like a orchestra. So, I think just I've always kind of been playing with musicians. I started like my first band was in school after high school. I was going to Musicians Institute in Hollywood.
Is that what
And
brought you to LA?
yeah.
Uh-huh.
And I had a 9-piece band there and was like playing with full band every single day. I was in multiple bands actually for a while there. And so, ever since then, and I still have a band. We only play, a handful of shows a year because they live in California and we're kind of all over the place. But that's always been definitely a big part of it, like learning how to play with a band, which I was also in multiple courses in school where like they teach you as a vocal performer they teach you how to lead a band.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was helpful. Those skills.
Your 9-piece band, what was the instrumentation?
So drums, bass, electric guitar. At one point there were 2 electric guitars, saxophone, 3 backup singers, keyboards, and then also I think I had a keyboard one time and a piano, like an upright piano too. So there's been a lot of different configurations. But we were doing like Southern rock. So it was kind of like, you know, trying to be like Tedeschi Trucks or something, just like that huge band sound. It was fun, but we were all very young and it was like very dramatic, a lot of drama. And I was like, I'm going to just play solo now.
It's so much easier in that way, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. Now it's fine because we're all just like, you know,
more mature and more experienced.
So chill. Yeah.
So you're still playing with a lot of the same people from that band. Is that right?
One person, my keyboard player, Spencer. We've been playing together for almost 10 years. Yeah. And we both left LA. He actually moved to Santa Cruz. He still lives there now. But he's originally from Marin, like the North Bay. And he's still in my band. I'm like, it's always funny to me because, you know, just like so much has happened over 10 years and I always find it funny that like he's the one that's still around. I don't know if I would have necessarily guessed that like when he joined the band when I was like 19 or something. Yeah. You know? So it's funny. It's cool though to like have friends and like musical partners like that. You know, as you get older, you're like, wow, we've really explored many genres here.
The long-term connections, and you have more, you know, it's a deeper connection the longer that goes, I feel like.
Absolutely. Yeah. I don't know. It'd be so weird to be in a band without him at this point. The band we have now is super solid.
Nice. So would he be like your musical director or would you do that or?
Yeah, I think we would like collaborate. We've gotten really good at collaborating. And he's actually in a world music band in Santa Cruz. Okay. And the drummer in that band is now the drummer in my band. And I met him through Spencer. And he's also like, they also do producing together. They like, you know, they collaborate on directing the world music band there. And they also work with other artists in Santa Cruz, kind of like doing the co-producing thing. And so, yeah, it's always a collaborative effort. I think one of the most important things to me when playing with other musicians or really just working with other artists of any kind is like choose people that you respect what they do on their own. So that way you can just like let them do what they're really good at. And like, you know, the product comes out so much better if everyone's just focusing on like what they're good at and just, you know, and just initially like choosing people that you're like, I like what you do. So I'm going to let you do your thing in this project. You know, I'm like, yeah, I'm not very picky. I have like very few ideas in my head going into a rehearsal. You're not saying,
I want you to play this specific part. It's more like, I really like how this person plays. I like being around them and I'm going to trust them to help make this vision come alive. Yeah. Well, I think that's best for everybody when everyone can be themselves, but for a common goal of some sort.
Yeah. I think it works with like all kinds of art too, you know, like even mix engineers. I'm like, you know, I give them like a very ambiguous sort of vibe. I'm like, okay, if you don't
ever send them a specific song or a specific album, or do you?
I'm kind of just like, yeah. I mean, with this last album, the guy who mixed it was just so on point, but I barely said anything. I'm like, this is kind of the vibe, maybe like this, you know, Bonnie Raitt record from this year, or like, you know, you did like psychedelics and then you mix this song, like pretend that you did, you know, and like, he just took it and ran and it was like perfect, you know? And I just like, cause I love his style of mixing that I knew it was going to be fine. But the same thing goes like, even when I'm doing shoots, like video shoots, and I have someone come in to do makeup, you know, they're like, well, what do you want? I'm like, you're the makeup artist, you know? I'm like, what do you think? Like, here's what the song sounds like. This is what I do well. So like, you know, I want you to have your creative influence on this too. So I think that's cool.
Do you think if you were 21, do you think you would approach it that way?
I was kind of a doormat at 21. And so like it might have, yeah, I don't think I would have approached it the same way, like maybe the same outcome, but I was like very easily just like swaying with the wind and like influenced by like what everyone else kind of liked musically or artistically. So I don't know. I feel like I've really come into just, yeah, I'm like confident in what I do. And I think I'm good at choosing people that fit my style, but then letting them do what they do best.
So maybe better at choosing who you work with too, I'm guessing. That probably
Oh
makes
yes,
a big difference.
definitely. Yeah. No doubt about that. Yeah.
So kind of want to just go back to church just a little bit because
Yeah.
I'm guessing that was a hugely formative, and for a lot of musicians, that's really formative. I'm Jewish, so I did not grow, and there was not a big musical tradition, and anyway, I grew up not really playing music in the synagogue or anything like that, or even really going to the synagogue that much. But so what denomination was it?
I grew up, part of the time, like when I was young, was like Foursquare
Okay.
Christian.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that.
I'm not sure. It's like, yeah.
Okay,
I think
so
it's a small denomination. Like, I don't know, like a lot of people haven't heard of it, and I have a lot of feelings about it now. We don't necessarily have to go into it, but
okay, that's fine. And the reason I asked, really,
then it was just kind of like a modern, like modern Christian church, just like non-denominational. That was kind of through high school, and so I got really involved on the worship team there, and it was sort of like, yeah, just that like modern Christian.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you, and that was really my so I've played recently at a church here in Nashville, and it kind of surprised me. I guess it's Christian rock. We're playing with in-ear monitors with Click, and to me it's like, I'm thinking like, wouldn't you want this organic? It's like the opposite of organic. It's more like a pop thing to me. And so was it like that as well? It was like the click track and all that as well?
I was a part of the church when they kind of started to switch over to the in-ears and like do the click track, and like everything was like very regimented, like no room for jamming or like feeling the moment or really any of that. It was very contrived. But I think the biggest thing I took away from singing, in church all those years was the harmonies. Like I just like, and musical theater too. Like I just had like a very strong sense of harmony from a very young age. And now it's like probably my favorite part about recording or just like writing music or singing with other people, is like how easily those harmonies come. It's like one of the most fulfilling parts about music to me too. And I definitely, I have to thank the church for that for sure. Cause like, three parts and all that.
So you will when you have specific will have specific harmonies for some of your songs that you'll teach those parts to other singers? Or?
Yes. So that's funny because that's the one element of my band that I'm like very picky about. And I often just don't have backup singers because not because I don't think I can find someone, obviously, but because I don't have a lot of time to practice. And like, I'm totally fine, like going up with my band and kind of winging it, because I'm like, I trust them and like everyone, has their stuff together. But if I don't have time to like rehearse the harmonies with the backup singers for like hours, then I just say no, like no harmonies, because that's like the one element that has to be perfect to me. But I mean, if we have time and like we're working stuff out, yeah, the singers I would choose, I'd be like, what do you think for this part? Or like, let's come up with something rather than just like the third and fifth, like I love writing vocal parts with other people. I just have to have the time. Like that's something I'm not willing to wing at all.
Yeah. So maybe at some point, if you have a regular band, then that's a part of it.
That would be awesome.
So it makes a lot of sense. And the reason why I went back to asking about the church was, so you actually did have a lot of time practicing with a metronome, with a click track, playing live and practicing with a church band. And so that makes sense. Your timing, I'm sure that had to be a huge part of your timing being like it is now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, So what is, like, as an independent artist before having any team, like what are just for people maybe who are wanting to do that or who just are fans of music, like what are, can you just paint a picture of what goes into that?
Just like being an independent artist and
Yeah.
kind of just running the show.
Or even like before you were, when you were just doing the corporate gigs and all that, like, some people might imagine an artist, oh, they're sleeping till 11 every day and they're blah, blah, but, I know that's not really true. And that probably a lot of people do know that, but like, what would a day when you were working the corporate gigs, like what would a day look like then?
So, at the time I was living in Santa Cruz and I was working in Monterey. So that's about an hour drive. And so, yeah, it was most of the weeks, I would have 6 gigs, but I would be working like Thursday through Sunday. So it would be, doubles on the weekends and then Thursday, Friday. And yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot of work because if you're not in like really good shape vocally, like you burn out.
You hurt your voice.
Yeah, you hurt your voice. It's a lot of standing. And like for me, it's like I don't use a loop pedal or anything. So I'm playing like 40 songs a set, like for 3-4 hours. Like yeah, memorizing a lot. You kind of gotta like keep it interesting because just playing the same covers like every single set every day, like
You sing
really
for yourself, right?
drive a person insane. Yeah. But yeah, lots of driving, lots of setting up. Like I brought my own PA system to every single gig. So it's like a lot of loading in, a lot of loading out, and by myself,
Your own sound person, keep getting
own sound person, own roadie, like the only, musician on stage. And then, yeah, just talking to whoever's running the event or like the owner of the venue or hotel or whatever I was doing. Just like all the corresponding. And when you're doing like weddings and corporate gigs, and I was working for a local booking agency that was like got all these jobs for me. But there is like a level of professionalism that you have to have that's so different than when you're just doing original gigs, because like you kind of have like more freedom to just be your own artist and like really be yourself. And that can be like charming for people. But when like you're playing someone's wedding, it's like you have to be on time. Like you really, really have to have your stuff together because they're paying you a lot of money. And especially when they go through an agency, like they expect you're an employee, really, is what it comes down to. Yeah, it was a grind. It was definitely a grind, like very burnt out. Like I said before, just like did not want to come home and write music or like touch my guitar at all. But it's nice to know that that's still an option for me, depending on like what way this goes. I would do things a lot differently now to where like I hope I wouldn't get burnt out like that anymore. But it's nice to know that I can make a living singing, even if it doesn't go the direction I want it to go. But yeah, it's a job. It's definitely a job. You have like a dress code. You can't wear blue jeans. Like you gotta like a lot of times wear all black. Like gotta look professional. They can't wear sneakers. So it's like you're standing for 4 hours holding a guitar, like singing, playing music in heels. And it's just like.
Oh yeah, and also when all the you're the focal point. That's just a whole nother level of energy that you're putting out, which doesn't always get replenished. Probably I'm guessing playing your own music, the energy comes back a lot more in the performances.
So much. It's so fun. But yeah, when it's hard because a lot of it I would call it like sonic wallpaper. Like you put so much time and energy.
I've been sonic wallpaper.
Yeah. And like that's how like the majority of these gigs were. And like there's something cool about that because if you're really not feeling it, then it's like whatever, no one's paying attention. But also it can be incredibly soul sucking to know like how much work you've done and like the years of school and like all the training you've had just to like stand up there and play wagon wheel for people that don't care. That's hard. It definitely wears on you after a while, but it's all about attitude, because I have a lot of friends that still do that and they they do the exact same grind that I was doing, and they have a great attitude, and they're like super happy and grateful to be there. And I was like, yeah. And then there was a point where I was like that too, but it was very obvious when it was time for me to like quit and move to
Well, I was
Texas.
gonna ask you, like, I mean, that's still, I'm sure, is a hard decision, and it's hard to leave regular work, you know.
Yes.
So you said that was obvious. So tell more about how you knew and how you decided to do it.
Yeah, the level of dread that I was feeling before gigs, I was like, this is not a sustainable way of living. And like, I really just stopped caring about the money even. I was like, I don't even want, you know, I can't do this. And I was really like starting to feel the time slip. And I kind of hit a plateau in terms of like getting better because I
When
just
you
kind
said
of
the
like,
time slip, what do you mean by that?
I was just getting older, you know, and I was like, wow, I still haven't like put out a record. I still am like not writing music, and like
So that was a goal. That was something that you've had in mind to be an artist at some point, was something in mind. But you found yourself making a living playing music, which is like, it's hard to say. And anyway, to me, I mean, I would argue that path that you've taken has been perfect for where you are now, to put you where you are now.
Yeah.
You know, not only the wisdom of being, you know, being the professionalism, the musicality, all of those things. So that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you decided to just leave it all behind and move to Austin. You had been to Austin, I'm guessing, and there was like, love the vibe. You didn't want to go to an industry town like Nashville, and you had been in LA. And I've only been to Austin one time, but I can see how it has a vibe. And you know, I moved from Portland, Oregon to Nashville, so the keep Portland weird, keep Austin weird thing is
totally.
they both have that. So,
Definitely.
and so you moved. You said it was a year before the pandemic that you moved there.
Yeah, I moved at the end of 2018.
Uh-huh.
And at that time, it was like a lot cheaper here than California too. So I was like, okay, I can like figure it out in Texas. Like, I don't have to worry about making as much money because like the cost of living in California was so high, which is like why I had to work so much. And so you know, I thought I would like get a little bit of relief moving to Austin. That's definitely not the case anymore. It's incredibly expensive here now.
It took off. Yeah.
Yeah, but it was just Santa Cruz is an amazing place, but it definitely can be a vortex. And it's like people just never leave. It's so easy to stay, especially if you figured out how to live there and you have like steady income. It's like it's a very I don't really even know the word. Like, it's an addicting place. People move away and they like come back. Like, they're always just being stuck. There's even times now where like I'll kind of flirt with the idea of like moving back, and I'm like, no. Like, no, I see where this is going. So yeah, I had always had kind of an infatuation with just Texas in general, even from when I was a kid. And I was like, you know, I want to go sing country music and be a cowgirl in Texas, was like my thought when I was like 9, you know. And then in middle school and high school, started listening to a lot more like singer-songwriter music, and a lot of the artists were from Austin. So I kind of started to just like turn those wheels. I was like, okay, Austin seems like a cool place because all these cool artists are from there. My friends like would go visit and they'd be like, oh man, it's so fun there. Like, it's such a good vibe. And so I always had that idea. And then randomly, when I was living in LA, my brother, who's married and has 3 kids, got a job in Austin. He just like told the family, he's like, I'm picking up, we're moving from the Bay Area and we're moving to Austin. And I was like, green light, like, yes. Okay. So now I have family out there. Then my entire family moved here because my parents wanted to be near the grandkids. My sister wanted to be near the whole family. So now literally all of my immediate family members live here. And so it was definitely just meant to be. And the way that like the timing happened was just absolutely perfect. So yeah, I think like that's kind of a running theme in my life. Like, the less I try, like the more things kind of just fall into place perfectly.
Very zen of you.
I'm trying to like, yeah, I'm trying to just keep that going. Like,
do you meditate? Are you a meditator?
I do. Yeah. I meditate 30 minutes a day. I normally do like 2 15-minute sessions.
And like when, like in the morning and afternoon, that sort of thing?
Yeah, it's not totally regimented, but I do try and do it like, before I get my day started and then just sometime before bed, really.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I'll do it like back to back. Yeah, it's kind of different every day. I don't practice like transcendental meditation. I've tried, which is really cool. I would like to get more into it, but
Have you looked into transcendental? No, because to me, like it's a trademark, transcendental, and I don't even know exactly what it is. I meditate as well, but it's anyway. So you have looked into transcendental meditation, and
yeah, and like there's the training
yeah,
aspect of it too, and like if I had like the extra $500, like that might be a fun
is it
thing.
really that different than other types of meditation? Is what I'm wondering.
I don't know. Like, yeah, I have someone really close to me that practices transcendental meditation every day for like, 7 years now, two
Mm-hmm.
25-minute sessions a day. And like that really works for them.
Yeah.
And yeah, I am always interested in learning more about basically anything, especially like any mindfulness practice. But a lot of the times my meditations, I practice metta a lot. So loving kindness.
Mm-hmm.
And also just like a strong manifestation practice, or like you could call it like a prayer practice, just like calling things in, just kind of getting that like energy to circulate, like in and out of you and like throughout, your close circle or just like the world or whatever sort of community you're in. I think that's probably the strongest practice I have.
Yeah. Well,
But yeah, the mantra meditation is cool too. I think you can have a mantra meditation practice like transcendental without like being a part of the TM community.
yeah. So is it a mantra based? Is that
Yeah.
I wasn't sure because I when the pandemic first started, Deepak Chopra and Oprah, so Oprah and Chopra,
Mhm.
where they were offering like a free, they had like an online thing,
Yeah.
and they would do, Oprah would talk a little bit about the theme for the day. I think it was like a 3-week thing, and then Deepak Chopra would talk about it, and then he would teach a mantra in Sanskrit, I guess. But I did like that. It did give me something to focus on in a different way. Cause like now my meditation is basically after I wake up, I just lay in bed and focus on my breath and just kind of let my thoughts go and just kind of observe them, try not to judge them, try not to hold on to them or make them go away. But
Yep.
anyway, so it is interesting the having, and that's Sanskrit or something. I think it's Sanskrit, something where I don't understand. I mean, he does explain, I guess, what the meaning is.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. It's yeah, transcendental. It's kind of like it's really just a sound. Like it's almost like just like a vibration, like a frequency to focus on that like doesn't have any meaning to you, really. Which is cool. But yeah, I mean, I think just sitting. Sometimes I just call them sitting sessions. I'm just like I'm going to sit for 15 minutes because I think just like at the core of all of it, all the practices, finding time, even if it's literally 5 minutes a day, to just go in and just breathe,
Absolutely.
And for a long time, because I really started meditating like consistently at the start of the pandemic too.
Likewise. Yeah.
Yeah, and I always like, I've been practicing yoga since high school and like I've definitely like meditated before, but yeah, started doing the like every day start of the pandemic, and man, that was like so essential to my well-being at the time, just because
I'm with you.
yeah, it would, I mean, obviously like things were absolutely crazy, but for so long I just thought it was try not to think, like just try and like let your mind be quiet, but really it's just like just observe the craziness that is happening and like don't judge it. That's really the practice, is where you can just like watch things and not react, not judge them, and yeah, just realize like how separate thoughts are from like who you are. So
Yeah. And that practice you can translate to music too. I mean, it's easy to be like, oh, I'm not happy with what I'm doing, or it's easy, or you could approach it like, okay, this is what's happening now. What could I change? So it's interesting, the meditation practice. Herbie Hancock is very known to be a Buddhist, and there's a great series where he speaks at Harvard about creativity, Buddhism, and playing with Miles.
Ooh,
Yeah, if
I
you
need
get a
to
chance,
look that up.
like a 3 or 4-part series, like these like 1.5-hour lectures or something like that.
Oh my
Um,
gosh. Okay.
yeah.
I will
Um,
definitely look that up.
and one of his former drummers, Mike Clark, who played with the Headhunters, he's Buddhist too. But it's interesting to talk just the effect of, and I know mindfulness and meditation did not have to equate to being Buddhist, but just how that impacted their music as well. And I'm sure in some way, and also just like your day to day, the stressors. I think like I find myself on certain days where I'm just feeling like just too much going on, where
Mhm.
sometimes I'll just sit down and just 5, 10, 15 minutes and I feel better afterwards.
Oh yeah.
Just
I
kind of process it.
I think, yeah. I don't know. I don't know where I would be without it, but also just like, yeah, as a musician, like music and yoga to me like go together so well. Like I would not be the musician I am if I didn't like have my yoga practice. And I think, yeah, because it's like, singing, playing instruments like is such a physical practice, so is yoga, but there's also like so much mental awareness that has to go into both of those things that
Mhm.
yeah, they really go hand in hand.
Yeah. So when you're on the road, because it seems like you're doing a lot of road dates. What How do you keep that balance between like eating healthfully? I mean, I'm assuming that that's a priority for you, but
Mhm.
and meditating still, doing yoga. How do you do it?
It's really hard, and I'm kind of new at being on the road this much. And at the beginning of the year, I like just the first time going on tour by myself, like was out for 5 weeks, and it
Mhm.
was so hard. I did not realize how difficult it would be to like sit in the car all day, show up, like be alone at the hotel, like not be able to find any healthy food anywhere at the like hours of the day that you need to eat. And
Mhm.
yeah, like not having a yoga mat because I'm flying and all that. So I'm still figuring it out, and every time I go out on the road it does get better.
Mhm.
But if I could like, there's always time to meditate, and as long as I have that, I think I'll be stable enough, and then the rest of the things can kind of just get better with time. But I recently was like, okay, I have the virtual yoga membership. My studio still does virtual, which is
Mhm.
awesome. So I have that. I'm like, I just bought like a folding yoga mat. Um, I've been starting to just like go to the hotel fitness centers because I'm like, I at least just have to get on the treadmill and like walk a couple miles because
Mhm.
just the like traveling is so bad, like so much sitting.
Yeah.
And yeah, and it kind of just like clears that energy too. I was like, I never thought I'd be like a hotel gym person, but I'm like, but I'm in the hotel like half the year now at
Fair,
least.
and it makes sense. Yeah. That's
Yeah. And so, like starting to do that. And then yeah, I'm still trying to figure out the food because a lot of places I go, like they're in the Midwest and they just don't really have healthy options like Austin and California.
mhm.
And I'm still trying to figure that out. That's hard. Yeah, because there's really like
Whenever I'm traveling, I
things.
find that to be hard too.
It's really hard, and yeah, I think getting better at just like going to grocery stores, but even then it's like how do you travel with stuff? Trying
Mhm.
to spend like less money. It gets so expensive too eating out, and then everything starts to just sound gross. You don't have like a home cooked meal. Like I'm still figuring that out, and I'm excited to go on the road again with Pokey and in the fall Sierra Hull.
Oh,
And I'm
nice.
just like, yeah, I'm just interested to see like what they do, and I'm just starting to
Uh,
ask a lot of questions
yeah,
to
yeah.
people that do this way more than I do and that have been doing it for a lot of years. Because
That's
I'm like,
smart.
you guys all seem really healthy. Like, how do you do it? And they're like, oh, we don't drink or something.
Yeah,
I'm like,
yeah.
well, that'll help. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, because I think people have these picture of like some rock bands in the 70s or 60s,
Yeah.
where it's this debauchery. It's like you can't sustain that. Um,
No. Well,
yeah,
yeah, a lot of them didn't make
they
it
didn't
through
sustain
that.
that. Yeah. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time to talk with me and enjoyed talking.
Yeah, this was so fun.
I'm glad we, crossed paths at the City Winery in Nashville. And I wish you the best of luck, and I look forward to following what you're up to. Um, And so you have a website, which is it Taylor Rae
Yep.
Music.com.
That's it.
So check that out, people, and also look for Taylor on in your city or your town.
I will be there.
Definitely worth checking out. Like I said, I'm pretty, you know, I don't just hear anything and love it, and I really did love your music. So
Thanks.
keep it up. And thank you everybody for tuning in, and have a great day.